Welcome to Beyond Pipeline. We talk about how top performers win the inner game of sales. My name is John Haboosh, and I'm your host. And today we have a very, very special guest. He's widely followed and respected in the software sales industry, has put out over 1,000 YouTube videos with the sole purpose of helping people to change their lives through being successful in software sales. And I'm grateful to call him a dear, dear friend. Without further ado, Trent Dressel.
I've got some Beyond Pipeline in my chalice this morning. We have some whole milk and some potent espressos.
I absolutely love it. How did that come to be? Did you make that in your apartment, or is that something we went and got?
Well, when you work fully remote, if you don't have an espresso machine in your apartment, then it's going to be awfully hard to remain productive at all times.
I respect that. I absolutely respect. I did not notice you had one. Is this a new purchase?
It's a new purchase. I wouldn't necessarily call it a purchase. It was more of an investment.
Investment. I knew you were going to say it.
In myself.
Dude, I know you too well. I knew you were going to say it was an investment.
Warren Buffett said investing in yourself is inflation proof. So this machinery, the Breville $800 espresso maker, is a priceless infinite return and delights me every single morning.
I absolutely love it. Cool. Well, we have a lot to talk about. We're talking about outbound for sure, cold calls, account strategy. With that being said, though, I want to talk about. I want to start with your beginnings, my man. I'd love to go back in time with you and hear the story about how you got into software sales and just what that was like for you, and then we can go from there.
Anywhere you want to go, I'm here.
Okay. So walk us through a little bit of what was it like for you when you first got into software sales? I'd love to walk folks through that, and we can kind of take it from there.
2017, senior at Ohio University, no idea where I was necessarily going. I knew I wanted to do sales directionally. So I used the low-hanging fruit at my disposal as part of a business organization, a sales organization. And we had a career fair with all these organizations coming on campus. I looked at all of them and said, which ones are hiring sales in a city outside of Ohio? Boom, 11, 13 companies. Show up to the career fair, went to the booth of all of them, introduced myself, got some interviews, and then ended up getting an offer at a software company that I started my career at in 2018. And I think one twist there is I actually got the offer from that software company, but also had the opportunity to be flown out to Boston to interview with Dell EMC. And I thought, oh, everyone kept telling me it was the golden ticket. So I got flown out there, and that was actually an interesting story because we had this big career fair day, and I didn't even get an offer. Didn't even get an offer from them. But fortunately, I landed at the software company, moved myself from Ohio to Dallas 2018, started out sales development rep, entry level, and worked my way up. And then 5 years later, found myself outside of the industry for over 450 days, and then rebroke back into the industry as an account executive. And that's what I'm doing now.
I absolutely love it. I love how you didn't get any offers, which is such a joke, dude. I hear so many talented people, or skilled people rather, that has happened to. It's hilarious.
Well, and it's important to note as well, in the second time around breaking in, keep in mind, I was out of the game for 450 days. I've got the personal brand and I've got some real track record. I got rejected by 11 different software companies. And I don't want to say I feel like a Tom Brady. Every team passed on me and I'm late round draft pick, but I mean, that's something you don't forget. These companies point blank telling you, hey, you're not a good fit for us. You're not good enough to work here. And I'll tell you, some of those companies are now in my book of business, and I'm very happy about that.
I absolutely love it. I wasn't planning on this, but now I'm going to go in and we'll kind of go. Can you walk us through what it was like, especially with your personal brand, your track record, dude, to be rejected for roles? I'm kind of laughing as I say that, but like, because you have all this experience, dude. You have all this, this credibility. Like, how'd you think through that?
Yeah, it is kind of funny to think about that. Well, what I'll tell you is I don't think I'm better than I am. In order for me to make the decision to decide to get back in tech sales, software sales, I had to really get over myself and look myself in the mirror and say, you got to get over your ego. Like, you're not all that. You can go back to corporate America, become an employee. Like, that's a great trajectory. That's a great route. That's actually what is most meant for you at this moment. But most of the companies that turn me down is because I was dealing with these low level recruiters that I think in most cases don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
I think the companies that I was able to work directly with a sales manager to start, they can recognize someone who knows what they're talking about. But a lot of these recruiters, I do think are get in their own way of they just look at, okay, how many years of sales experience do you have in your resume? What's your average deal size? Okay, you don't fit the what we're looking for, not a good fit. And I think that that's a massive disservice to a lot of these companies that these recruiting workforces, um, most of them aren't able to detect the intangibles. And ultimately, a quote I like to live by is ignore the noise, the market will decide. And the market will ultimately decide what happens to these companies and how much talent they're able to concentrate and how they perform in the long run. So there's no resentment, there's no ego, and it all worked out how it was meant to work out.
Yeah, and I totally respect that, and I think obviously you've obviously earned a spot or a really great place. I would love to understand, going a little bit layer deeper on this though, is like talking about the inner game. Like, how do you handle rejection today, whether it's on a cold call or an interview, even if you think again the rejection's invalid from a recruiter that may or may not know what they're doing per se. How do you deal with that mentally?
Yeah, like any other human, at first you start to have a sense of not belonging. Everyone wants to feel special, and it hurts at first. But I think once you recognize, okay, that happened, it is what it is. I'm not necessarily associating an identity around this. It's not directly personally against me. And I think I must embrace reality and deal with it. So if I get rejected and told no, okay, well, where did I fall short communicating my story or the value of me as a candidate or my product, how it can benefit them? At some point, I fell short of that, and it's cause and effect. So based on what I did, the cause, and then their effect was the rejection. And then I take it, I accept it, I learn from it, I move on. And it's really nothing more than that. I think if you get held up on the rejection, I think that's what a lot of people talk about, especially with cold calling. Hey, I'm worried about getting rejected or the failing, but that is table stakes in this game. And the more rejection, the better in most cases because you learn from it. And if you're not constantly getting rejected, then you're probably not putting yourself in enough situations where you stand to benefit. If there is no danger or risk, then typically there is not very much upside.
I absolutely love that mentality. I'm going to highlight that. There's not a lot of risk. There's typically not a lot of upside, and I love how you don't attach. So I'm going to pull up for the audience too. If is you don't attach it to your identity, right? You don't attach the rejection to who you are as Trent. It's just like something that occurred, right? It's an outward thing that you can observe and move on. So thank you for going on that tangent with me. I think it was really important, especially for the inner game. But I do want to now go back because I do love hearing your story. Even when we talked about it, I want the audience to hear it of like being an SDR, like finding your way through, being successful. Like, can you walk us through a little bit more of what was like first starting out? Like, how did you find your rhythm with cold calling? Like, I'd love to better just get people to know the beginning trend.
I wasn't naturally great at sales, even though I may come across as incredibly well spoken and charismatic to this day. It's come from a lot of practice, but I didn't actually have it. I was raw and I didn't know what was going on. So I was the worst performing SDR my first month out of about 36 SDRs. My first monthly quota was generating 6 opportunities. I got 5 and was at the bottom of the leaderboard. And I remember at the end of that first month, I just moved to a new city right out of college, starting a new career, and you're still questioning, do I have what it takes to make it in this situation? And I had to look myself in the mirror and accept inadequacies and recognize there's a lot of areas to get better here. So I started seeking out feedback from people who had done it before. And a senior sales leader basically told me, look, if you think you're trying hard, you're probably 70, 80% like giving it your all. But once you're really all in, you're 100% effort and you're showing up each and every day. And to me, that was the shift of really being all in and not considering alternative paths, not thinking, well, if this doesn't work, then I'll go do that, or maybe I could go do this. It was just a matter of you're not wasting any time thinking about anything other than the work at hand, which is today, I need to show up I need to make 100 cold calls. That's all I need to focus on doing. How many prospects do I need to find to add to sequence? How many emails do I need to send so I can make 100 cold calls today? And you do that every day for 9 months straight. And all of a sudden, you start to learn some things. You start to build some confidence, and it's impossible not to start getting results whenever you start to lead the team on input activities. And that starts to pay off. And that's what I did for 18 months as an SDR until I was able to promote to an account executive. And by the time I became an account executive, I had, in my eyes, mastered pipeline generation. I knew how to do that. I built competency around that skill through repeated practice and demonstrated results. Everyone's in such a rush to become an account executive. But if you do not really understand how to fundamentally generate pipeline, then it will be awfully hard to sustain success as an account executive.
Yeah, I like that you see the perspective of I needed to master this role to move on to it. And I want to pull some things out there too of you put in some insane volume, right? When you were learning and you were growing your confidence, like you learned the skill and you really went all in. Those are the main threads that I pulled, was that you went all in, and then you also, through going all in, you built skills and you built confidence. I think a lot of people lack confidence because they don't go all in, they don't focus. What was it like for you to build that confidence over that 9 month period where you're making 100 cold calls a day? Like, how did it feel to transition from uncertain, I'm not sure if I'm all in, to hey, I'm 9 months deep making 100 cold calls a day? Like, what was that process like for you?
I don't think I knew this at the time, but I believe belief precedes ability. So, regardless if you have any competency around skill, the ability to do something well, ability, talent, everyone controls their willpower, which is deciding your work ethic, how hard you're going to work, how consistent you're going to be, what you're going to focus on, what you're going to do, when you're going to show up, when you're going to stop working, how many calls you're going to make, what you decide to prepare ahead of time to say on the call. And at the time, I was rough and undeveloped and still feel that way most of the time. But I knew enough to say, okay, I can show up at 7:19 to the office. I can start calling before 8, and I can call all day for 4 hours and then repeat and do it again each and every day as a mini challenge to myself, but also to beat other people. At the time, that was the motivation. I will beat other people, and that makes me feel better about myself. And that it was as simple as that. It was just deciding I will outwork everyone else around me around the willpower input metrics, which was call volume. That was something in my control. Use the tools at my disposal, and was continuously refining my craft and learning. And it's just a matter of staying consistent and doing that every day. Some will decide to do it, some will decide not to do it, but everyone has the ability to decide. Everyone's in control. And once you start to not assume control, I think that's when you start to get in trouble with what you were talking about there, about people being uncertain, people not having confidence, is because they're not assuming responsibility for their actions. And then as you repeatedly do it and get results, you'll start to reinforce and build more and more confidence. But I think it's important to have confidence before you have results, and just believe you can do it. And that's how I try and come across and show up, with absolute conviction in everything I do, regardless if I have any idea what's going on.
And that personally is what internally I call like the Trent factor, because you do give off that type of energy. Even the first time I met you, so I respect that. Going back, so you say belief needs to come before the confidence or the results. But then how does one develop belief? Is it simply just through hard work? Because then you go, okay, I'm gaining skill and you're reducing overall ignorance? Or is there some other way? Like, how do you think people build belief? Because I'm just being, if I was in the audience, that's a question I'd be asking myself.
I don't think that it's a matter of building or anything. It's just you have it right now. And I think that's something people get hung up on, is you think you need to do all these things to be ready. You're ready right now. Like right at this single moment, you can decide to believe I can go make some calls right now and set a meeting. That's it. Trent, what's the best sales book to read? You don't need another sales book. You just need to start making calls and start doing it. And you'll build more confidence that way. But that's what it's belief precedes ability. You don't need to know how to do something to do it. And there's a really fantastic interview that came to mind of a guy named Steven Schwartzman. He's the founder of BlackRock, and this man is worth $37 billion. He talked about building his firm in the early days. him and his partner went off to build this firm. His partner said, yeah, Steve, I think we should raise about $200 million. That should give us enough money to go buy companies. And Steve's like, no, 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 no. We need to raise $1 billion. And his partner's like, Steve, no one has a fund that big. No one's ever done that. He's like, well, I think we can do it. And then they go and raise $1 billion. And then they're like, hey, we should go buy some real estate. And they're like, well, we've never bought a building before. Steve's like, I think we can go buy a building. And I'm oversimplifying things here, but I think just if you look at someone at the highest level in the early days of especially entrepreneurship, but I think there's a lot of parallels to sales. It's just believing, yeah, we can do it. We've seen someone else do it. In some cases, we have never seen someone do it, but I believe I can do it. And either you believe you can do it or you don't believe you can do it. And you don't need to go off and read all these books to be able to believe you can do it or build up whatever. It's just right in this moment. I got what it takes. Let's go.
Yeah, I resonate with that deeply, especially with like the reading all the books and stuff. Because I had a couple years where I was like, okay, I'll read these books, I'll get ready, I'll be whatever. And I think there's a certain threshold, whether it's maybe you just develop a certain amount of skill because I've seen what I can do. I'm like, okay, I can just go do it. But I think that takes time for people. I think maybe you can flip a switch, and I think you can too. But I think it's hard. I think it's like a muscle that develops over time.
Yeah, I think and there's a great Michael Jordan quote by basically saying my confidence matches my skill levels. And as you develop your skills to become the most competent, you can become very, very confident from knowing you actually have the substance to back it up. But before you have the substance, you still need to believe that you can develop into that person. And there is no need to wait. So, for example, when I decided I'm going to get back into software sales, it's you got to radically change the way you're spending your time, the way you're thinking, and you can push off the process of identifying companies, applying to companies, doing interviews, and going through all that because it's very challenging. But how many people do you know just wait? They wait weeks and they're like, yeah, I'm working on it. I'm reading this book and I'm waiting to get ready. Or
Yeah.
even once you get your new territory plan, like me, I've got all these new accounts. What am I going to wait to start calling until I feel like I know more about what I'm talking about? Like, what am I waiting for? I got to go right now. And that's the difference is just deciding to act right now, despite not having all the information.
I'm gonna pull that thread. Deciding to act right now. That's something that I think a lot of people struggle with. That I think is a strength of yours, and I absolutely love it. And I think a lot of people can learn from that. So you're on your SDR journey. Okay, you're developing some confidence, things like that. When did you decide to start the YouTube channel? At what point were you like, hey, I'm gonna start posting stuff on YouTube and really get going with it?
It was right about 18 months of my sales career, right around when I was about to promote to account executive, because I knew I had put in the work as an SDR. At this point, I had made tens of thousands of cold calls, generated tens of millions of dollars of pipeline, and really feel like I worked on my craft to a point where I could now talk about it. And this was right around March, April of 2020. So during the pandemic, we all had to operate within our homes, fully remote, stay at home orders. And I was sitting there trying to promote in my career and find success. And I started to look around me and say, okay, I see a clear path here, but I want more. I want to make money online. That's what I wanted to do because I loved watching YouTube and I saw what some of these YouTubers were doing. And I thought, well, if they can do it, if Graham Stephan can print $1 million a year in ad revenue talking about personal finance, why can't I do that? What does he know that I don't know? And that was the decision. There's some context that I always enjoyed making videos. Like in college, I always walked around with a GoPro and would record weekends and make sort of mini
Oh, that's cool.
documentaries
Okay.
of my friends and I just doing degenerate things. Those will never see the light of day. But I always loved making videos. So it was a combination of I want to make money online. I enjoy making videos. And I have now developed more confidence because I have this career. I'm making money. I'm living in a new city. I always wanted to do the YouTube, but I don't think I was ready. I had this narrative that I wasn't ready, but I don't think I was ready until about 23, 24ish, 18 months of my career. And then I started making YouTube videos.
Yeah, it sounds like for you, it came from a point of you already liked doing it. I think a lot of people sit and go, well, what I want to do is like a side hustle. What I want to build going forward. And it sounded like for you, the discovery process was I already like making videos. Now I feel like I have something to say is I feel confident. I'm at a point where I got all this time now with COVID and that was kind of the magical, the perfect storm that, and that I don't want to say enabled you. I think you could always done it, but that got you to go like, all right, I'm gonna really start this.
Well, I'm laughing because a lot of people want the side hustle. A lot of people want to make money online. But the difference is I would be making videos if I were the last person on earth. Like if I were literally the last person on earth where no one was capable of watching, I would still be recording myself saying I'm out here. Don't know if I'm going to survive very long. Like don't know what's happening. Like
Feed
I would
myself. Yeah.
I would still be making videos.
Yeah. Totally.
I
Totally
was
with this.
willing to make over 300 YouTube videos over the course of 15 months before I made a single penny online. And I was working harder on that than I bet a lot of people were in their actual full-time careers. And I was grinding in my career, 50, 60 hours most weeks, and then putting in another probably 20, 30-ish hours trying to make YouTube videos, figuring out what was going on. And I was willing to do it for a long, long period of time before I made a dollar. And that's the difference is you do, for me, it's fun. For other people, it's work.
Yeah, it's perfect. Naval Ravikant talks about that, and I don't know if he wrote the book or maybe it's his almanac. I think someone wrote about some of the stuff he said, but I totally agree with that. It's very wise, Trent. Does not surprise me. What enabled you to? And I think you might have just answered it, but what enabled you to develop consistency? I was watching one of your old videos, and we talked about before this, where you were talking about how you started I don't want to say this for the group, so they hear the beginning, Trent. You started a couple podcasts and you didn't finish. You started a blog, you didn't finish. Like, what enabled you to be successful, to be consistent with the YouTube? Like, what was really the switch? What changed in your life that made you really want to be consistent and stick with it?
Right. And it's easy to look at my YouTube channel today and say 1,200 posted videos. It just worked out. Got so lucky. I made the decision at 23 ish. I want to make money online, but I didn't know how to do that. You see these people doing drop shipping, you see people making YouTube videos. But I didn't know what to do. So I was reading a personal finance blog and I thought, oh, I'll do a blog. That seems good. So what do? I actually acted on it. I went and set up a WordPress site, bought a domain, started working on it, called it wealthsmoothie.com. And it was terrible design. And I hate writing and I'm not very good at writing. It didn't work. I posted one or two articles and then stopped doing it. And then was left scratching my head. Wow, that's it? This is so much harder than I thought. And then I decided, okay, well, I like podcasts. I'll start a podcast. I don't have the confidence to do it alone, but maybe I can find a friend. So I found another SDR I was working with and started a podcast with him, bought the microphones on Amazon. We called it the Reluctant Adults. And it was actually a lot of fun. We recorded about 10 episodes. It was super awkward at first. We were like, what are we doing? We recorded 10 episodes and we stopped. That was that. Okay, I guess I'm a failure again. And then a few months later, I'm like, well, let's give this another try. Let's get that guy back in. Let's get another person. Let's do another podcast. Generation Zillions. Did about 10 episodes of that. Had a lot of fun. And then what did we do? We stopped. We weren't consistent. So this was a process of about 8-9 months of trying the blog, trying the podcast, until I realized, okay, I can't count on anyone else. No one's going to come do this for me. I just need to do the work. So I started my YouTube channel. And then you said you went back 4 years ago to watch these early videos. I'm talking about Joey Chestnut eating hot dogs. I'm talking about 4th of
It
July.
was so
I'm
awesome to
talking about
watch. It was so awesome to
personal
watch,
finance
dude.
stuff. I'm
Oh
talking about
man.
like whatever random
Getting
stuff.
getting rejected and roll the pool. So I had to
Getting
say it. It was so
yeah.
people need to hear this. People need to hear this because it's awesome.
Yeah. If she's watching right now, it's
Her
we're
mistake.
I mean, yeah, she wish I don't think she's ever seen a
I have to
44th
ask, was that
floor.
girl on the thumbnail her? Did you take a picture of her and
No,
put it?
no, that was
Okay.
Blake Lively on the
Okay.
thumbnail.
I
Yeah.
yeah, see, I don't know. Okay. I was gonna be like, wow, or
But
bro.
yeah, there's no resentment, but you're just talking about anything. And it wasn't until 6 months in where I got the advice from actually a guy named Noah Kagan, who some people may be
Yeah.
familiar with. He has these office hours. I showed up to his office hours, and he's a successful entrepreneur. And he's like, hey, apply to this challenge, Weekend Millionaire Challenge. I applied to it. He selected me to come on to one of his podcasts to basically critique my business idea. And I'm like, yeah, I want to start selling pet food online. He's like, that's a stupid idea. Like, what do you actually want to do? I'm like, YouTube. He's like, all right, do YouTube. And then he's like, why don't you just talk about software sales since that's what you actually do? I'm like, that's a really good idea. And as soon as I got that insight that seems hidden in plain sight, because that's now my entire brand identity online, I fully committed to that and said, all right, I will only talk about this topic, and the rest is history. And speaking of consistency, I posted a new video for 144 days straight. 144 days straight, an 8+ minute video. And you can just say that, like, oh, like that must have been a lot of work. Yeah, it was a ton of work. If anyone here has ever made a single video, imagine doing that for 144 days straight while working a full-time job. That was the level of determination where it was not even, there was no question whether it was going to work. I knew it was going to work. It didn't matter how long it took. It was just continuously showing up and doing it.
I love that. How did that mindset? Because I did a switch flip for you, right? And how did that mindset changed the mindset of, let me be more specific, how the mindset of this is going to work no matter what, I'm going to do it. Like how that mindset free up what you thought was possible for you.
You can't, I don't think you can teach that. But it's just it really is back to the belief precedes ability to that point. And it's just, I think it's such a cop out to look at people that are further ahead than you. Like looking at Mr. Beast, it's like a Grand Canyon between where we're at and where he's at. And if you just use that as your baseline, it becomes inconceivable to even get started. I set the expectations at the basement. I said, all right, there's no expectations. It's something I'm fully committed to. I don't have the natural charismatic talent to just get on camera and instantly get views. I'm going to have to do it the hard way. And it's the same thing in the software sales career and the same thing with this. And I think that's the challenge most people face. It doesn't just come naturally it doesn't happen overnight for most people, but it's easy to reach for those outlier stories and use that as the exception to the rule, and then use that as an excuse to never do it or get started. Anyone can decide by sheer willpower, I will do it. I'll show up every day and continue as long as it takes indefinitely. I'm not doing this as a means to some end. Oh, I'll get 100,000 subscribers or make 100K a year and just quit. It's like, this is an infinite pursuit. I intend to make videos forever, as long as I can, as long as I still want to do it. I intend to continue succeeding in business as long as I can do it. It's a infinite pursuit. It's not just I'll do it to get that. It's I'm doing it to do it.
It sounds like the process itself is rewarding for you.
The work is the reward for the work, because if you work hard in your career as a means to get promoted, you get promoted. The satisfaction from that's awfully short-lived. So if you're doing it as a means to get promoted, then it's just this shallow existence of always chasing something that doesn't actually mean anything. But if you work as a means to do the work, then the reward for doing great work is the ability to do more work, because you're going to have a higher quota. You're going to be making more money. There's going to be more responsibility, more expectations. So it really is just doing it because you enjoy doing it. And it's easy to say that from my vantage point, but I fortunately feel alignment and am doing the exact type of work I want to be doing. Has not always been like that, but it's a process of elimination and having courage to find that. And then once you feel like you find it, going all in and not escaping that reality and really committing yourself and seeing how far it can take you.
I love the part about just really committing yourself and just allowing yourself to go the overall distance. What do you think makes it hard for people to find the work that's inherently meaningful for them? Right. And yeah, I'm actually gonna stop here. I was gonna add some context, but what do you think makes it challenging for people to find work that's inherently meaningful for them, like videos are for you?
I don't have a great answer to this, but I think that there's a fantastic blog on work by a guy named Paul Graham. He was the former CEO of Y Combinator. He has an amazing blog post on this. I think it's just called Work, but type in Paul Graham Work. It's something I was reading as I was deciding to get back into software sales. And I'll tell you what good work, what you may want to look for. And it's work that you have accountability in and that you have leverage in. So what I mean by that is accountability is you are accountable for results. So in sales, it's very clear. You directly contribute revenue and you get paid in proportion to your revenue contributions. This gives you more leverage on your time because as you develop your skill levels and progress forward, you now can work with bigger and bigger companies that can spend more and more money. So for that single unit hour of time, rather than speaking with a 100 million revenue organization, you can speak with a 10 billion revenue organization and potentially sell much larger deals. So you have accountability because you are responsible for results, and it's dangerous because there's risk. Because if you do not produce results, you're at risk of getting fired or losing your job or not feeling good about yourself. But that's the trade-off. I think most people would work harder if they knew they could get rewarded for it. But most people are in non-performance based jobs. So I think looking for a job, there needs to be some element of accountability in it to performance. YouTube, that's a great example. You post a video and you instantly see how many views, likes, comments you get. There's no hiding from that reality. In sales, you know exactly how much revenue you produce at the end of the quarter. And then you have leverage because you can generate more per unit of time. And I'd say those are two factors that are really, really important when looking for meaningful work.
Yeah, it sounds like the main things are get leverage and then find something that has leverage inherently. And then also obviously find something that you enjoy doing. So there's some leverage and accountability and then mix with what you enjoy doing.
Right. And speaking of the Almanac of Naval Ravikant, he talks about the different forms of leverage that I think is a great framework for thinking about the types of industries and work you may want to be doing. He says the lowest form of leverage is human labor. So, for example, this
Yeah.
is the oldest form. You decide to start a restaurant. You need employees to operate the restaurant, and it's a matter of scaling up your staff to work on your behalf and create operational leverage. You can make a lot of money doing that. The next form of leverage is capital leverage. Think about hedge funds, venture capitalists. They aggregate large pools of capital and then invest it to generate returns. And they have the same amount, these billionaires who invest have the same amount of time that we have in a day, but they have all this money to back their decision making. And the better decisions they make, the more leverage they have. And then the next form of leverage is media and code. And this is the highest forms of leverage. So because the marginal unit of reproduction is basically zero. So for example, we do this podcast, we spend 1 hour doing it. It can go off and be listened to a million times with us doing no extra work. You write a software program, it's infinitely scalable, it's high margins, and you can sell it to anyone in the world right now. Whereas if you're developing cars, think about all the labor inputs, think about all of the material inputs. How do you get a car from Japan to America? That's very expensive. Storing it, that's expensive. So when I think about me, I don't know everything, but I do know, okay, if I make YouTube videos, that's media. That gives me leverage. If I sell software, that is the best business model in the world, in my opinion. And then if I take all the money I make from those two things and then invest it in the stock market, capital leverage, I don't need to be very smart to put myself directionally in a place that I think will hopefully be a good outcome.
I love how simple you make that sound, which it really is simple, right? It's like, again, yeah, it's there's some key themes there that I really liked. Again,
But
finding opportunities to leverage.
I don't think it's that simple. Because if it were so simple, everyone would be doing it. But the challenge is seeking out that information. How many people have actually read the Almanac of Naval Ravikant? How many people are it's seeking out this information because you're not just born understanding this. Like I didn't
I
just
agree.
leave Ohio University and understand, oh, I need to go do this. Like I got super fortunate, but I'm continuously refining my craft and developing, seeking out that information to, like you like to say, remove your to become less arrogant. Is that what it is?
Ignorant and
Ignorant.
arrogant
Yeah.
and arrogant. Removing arrogance is good too, but remove ignorance.
Remove ignorance. And another book is the Charlie Munger's Almanac.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Whatever that one's called. And another thought exercise is inversion. So saying what would I need to do to guarantee I'm not successful? So for example, if we said, what could we do to guarantee we're not successful? Well, we could party on the weekends like you always try and get me to do. That's one way. We could eat really unhealthy food. That's another way. We could not
Like
make
you
our
always try to get me to do. Yeah.
we I like ice cream. We could decide not to make our cold calls. Okay, that's a surefire way to guarantee we're not successful. We could decide to have a bad attitude and low energy because we stay up all night watching TV or playing video games. Like that's a surefire way to be less competitive. So think about what would you need to do to guarantee you do not achieve the results you want and go do that.
I think that's a great place to start because it narrows in. Like it's hard to almost say you had a really good YouTube video back in the day where it was like, it was about building confidence. You're wearing this cool shirt, and then you were like, you need to define what you want, right? Yeah, it was a great video, dude. I loved it. And I think when people, trust me, I'll bring it back. When people are trying to find what they want for their life, it's really hard, right? It's hard to sit down and go, what do I want? But it's easier to say, let's do an inversion. What do I not want? And start there and start to narrow down and get into the vector of right. So I want to pull out that nugget because I thought it was a really good video and a very good point. With that being said, so we talked about the SDR days, talked about the YouTube. You had an insane run as a account executive, and just you've had a lot of success there. One of the things I want to learn and understand is because I know you got promoted like very quickly at the previous company that you were at. Like, what was it like for you to see that success, to feel it, to make an immense amount of money? I think I saw one of your graphs of like the income you had. It was like 120, 150, and then it was like 200 or something or 300, and it just went up. Like, what was? Can you walk us through that journey of being successful as an AE and what was like for you to achieve those? Yeah, those to achieve that success financially.
The money thing is it's a fun topic to talk about, and I've vowed ever since that experience I will not talk about how much money I make going forward ever again. But I've been very public about how much money I have made, and I think it's fun to be for people to understand the reality so that you can decide how credible I am based on my actual
Yeah, I totally
results, not
respect
just
that.
having talk about what maybe would work. So my first year right at college, 22, 23, made I think 75K my first full year. Next year made about, I think it was like 110, 120K, something like that. Next year was about 180K. So that was a nice jump. And then the next year was 302K. And that was just pure W2 income being an account executive. That didn't even count the online stuff, which was also pretty significant. So you could imagine 26-year-old Trent, huge ego, living in the cool apartment. I didn't even know I made that much money. I was just sitting there. I received an email with my tax return, and I looked at it and it said $302,000. It didn't even make sense to me. But of course, I started talking about it, making content around it. And the reason that was possible is because I had promoted very quickly to account through the account executive ranks. And that year, the previous year, I was still ramping. So my annual quota was about 350, 400,000 ARR, but I closed 975,000 ARR.
Nice.
So about half of that was pure accelerators. So rather than getting paid 10% commission rate, I made like 15, 20% commission rate on some of that. So my commission checks, I got like a 35K one, a 50K one, and that's what was
Stack up.
realistically I made probably like low mid 200s, but with those two big commission checks, that's what allowed it to be possible. The reason I was able to actually do that at such a young age is because I decided I was living downtown Dallas, doing the party stuff on the weekends, and I had a bit of a personal challenge as a result of getting called out at SKO because this was right around when I'm starting to sort of find some traction on YouTube with the content. And then I got called out at SKO from a senior sales leader in a way that really ignited a fire in me where I felt like I had to go prove to the world how great I was. And I wasn't full of fluff, whatever. So that year was like, I'm going to perform no matter what. How can I ensure my chances of success? Well, let me move to North Plano in a suburb and live in an apartment complex where I'm the youngest person by far. This is like borderline retirement community. I was living in this place, nothing going on, no young people. Like Plano, Texas is not a place you want to live at. It's a place you want to work at, not a place you want to live at. So I moved up there and I had zero so that I did it solely so I could have no distractions and have no social life. it may sound romantic, but you got to really be about it to be willing to do that. I don't know if I would be willing to go to that extreme length again, but it literally was. You can go back and watch the videos because I documented some of it. It'd be wake up at 4:45, do marathon training, go to the office from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., record a video before I leave, and go home and go to bed and do that 5 days a week. And then on the weekends, my average Saturday would be, you know, you like look at your phone wondering, oh, I wonder if something's going on today. Like there was no thought of anything going on today because there was no conception of anything other than work. It was wake up, watch my favorite podcast, All In, eat oatmeal, and then go run 10 miles. While I was running, I would listen to audiobooks. I would listen to Jocko Willink, Extreme Ownership, and just these ridiculous self-development books while I was training for marathons. Like, and that's all. And then Sunday, yoga, grocery store, bed. That's it. That's all I did for about 7 months. And then I had extreme success in my career, and then got to a point where I was like, this is like, why am I doing this? Because I promoted from account executive level 3 to AE5, almost closed $1 million my first year as an AE on a ramping quota, blew up my YouTube from like 5K subs to 30K subs. I'm like, career wise, things are going pretty well, but personal wise, not going so well. So I ended up canceling my lease, paying. I was like, I don't like, I'll pay whatever. I don't care. I'm leaving. Cancel my lease, move back downtown to the coolest apartment I could find, and sort of unraveled from that point forward. But that's what it took to achieve that level of career success at that age. I learned a lot from that, but that is the reality of like literally you were all in. There's nothing other than work. That's all I knew.
It sounds like that was a time where it was very like it was very empowering for you because you could focus, but you were lacking some community and some, I think, pretty necessary things as well.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily sustainable or healthy. The community part is big, but I also think on the other hand, I'm grateful for the
Yeah,
decisions I made
I
because
respect that.
you want to do that earlier in your career, and that is what allowed me to build a financial base that has positioned me well to this day. But I'm 28, so it's not like it's been that far since then. But I know what it takes to. I lived in a cheap apartment, had literally no possessions, and only worked. So I know what that looks like. I know what it takes, and I plan to apply a similar intensity to what I'm doing right now.
I respect that, and I look forward to watching and maybe grinding out some hours on a Saturday. Regardless, I'm just curious, how long were you in play now?
About 7 months.
Yeah, good for you. I respect, I respect that. So I really appreciate you walking us through your story, things like that. I want to talk a little bit about before we talk about outbound and strategies. I do want to talk about that as I think it's also important, especially with who you are. I want to talk about what do you do today to be able to perform. What do you do today to show up with? You have a lot of energy. Like just getting to know you. You have a lot of like really good energy, and you're very confident, and you exude a lot of just good energy. You're calm generally. And like, what do you do to ensure you can show up at your best every single day? I know you're into yoga and you meditate, but would love to give people a sneak peek as to like what you're really focused on right now to make sure that, especially as you progress at the current company you're at, you know, that you're focused every single day and you're able to show up with your best energy. Would love to walk into that.
I think your outer world is a reflection of your inner state. Your thoughts determine your actions, and your actions are what give you what you have. You decide your level of fitness, you decide how you spend your time, and I accept full responsibility and control for my decisions. I know no one's coming to save me, and I live my life in the most intentional way that I'm capable of based on what I know. So I'll just walk through an average weekday every single day, weekday, Monday through Friday, wake up at 5:30, instantly walk out of my, within 5 minutes, I'm out the door, walk into yoga, go to 6 a.m. yoga class, get back and sit at this desk all day working. And then until 5:45, I walk out the door, walk back to the yoga studio. I do a 30-minute breathwork class to sort of rejuvenate myself. I come home, I work on a YouTube video, and then at that point, it's about 7:45, 8. I'll either go lay in bed and read, or I'll go lay up at the pool and listen to a podcast. I'm in bed by 9 p.m., and I do it the next day. So there really is no excess. There is no distractions. There's no drama. I have fortunately to have a meal service where I get nutrient rich, fresh, healthy food delivered weekly. I get 15 gallons of spring water delivered weekly. So I'm eating the healthiest food that I'm aware of that I can be putting in my body. I don't have a TV. I don't play video games. I don't, despite having a large social media following and posting frequently, I have no social media on my phone. So it's back to that question of what would you do to guarantee you're not successful? And I've identified a lot of those things. Don't gamble, don't drink, don't do drugs, don't stay up late, don't watch TV, don't play video games, like don't deal with people that are going to drain my energy. So I've just cut out a lot of the basic things so I can always do the best I can to get a lot of sleep, be hydrated, eat very healthy, constantly working out. And then the information I consume, it's no longer just an endless stream of whatever. It's very intentional. It's listening to biographies on the Founders Podcast. It's reading books like the Charlie Munger's Almanac. It's journaling and it's just living in a very intentional way where if you compound those habits over the next few decades, we'll see what sort of results that yields. But it's pretty clear that if you live like that, you position yourself where you set yourself up to be successful.
How do you define success?
I'd say it's just I think I feel internal satisfaction knowing I'm maximizing my potential. So for example, when I slip up and order Wingstop on Uber Eats because that's one of my favorite meals, I eat it and then I'm like, I feel like a piece of garbage right now. Like I know I slipped up and I have to live with I have to live with the repercussions of the next day. Bowel movement's not going to work as well and like kind of feel a little gross inside. If I even watch some stupid video on YouTube, I'm like, I don't feel as good afterwards because I know that I did not need that. So if I find myself in certain situations where I know I have no business being in, I'm like, I can feel it. And I think a lot of people know when they're not maximizing their potential, and some are willing to do something about it and some aren't. So success to me is just the process of doing it to the best of my ability every day.
I share that with you where you want to maximize your potential. Like that resonated a lot. And I think that's a really good pull through for folks listening is like whatever you do, like find a way to maximize what you're putting out there for the world, just for yourself. That's something I've seen in you, which I respect deeply. Um, with that being said, I do want to talk about some outbound and account strategy, things like that. I know you started a new, I also put a new software company as for confidentiality's sake, I guess. What I want there's two core things, and we can go through and talk about some other stuff. But I want to talk about your overall account strategies. I know you and I even talked about that one-on-one. Yeah, I'm going to highlight. Trent has a great course that also I don't know if it still does, but it had one-on-one coaching and involved in that.
No
So
longer live.
recommend.
No longer
Yeah,
live.
no longer live. Never mind.
Not,
Screw that.
I'm not selling anything besides course careers. So if you're looking for a job, I have a $500 course for that. But otherwise, we took everything down, just trying to create from a place of authenticity and yeah, nothing to sell. I'm just telling the truth.
I absolutely love it. Well, I was lucky enough to be able to someone at one time, but we talked about account strategy. So I'd love to understand as you're, going through your book now, what is your account strategy? How are you thinking about it? And then we can talk more about cold calling, things like that.
The territory plan is incredibly important. That's what I'm looking at. I just got my book of business 2 days ago, about 800 or so accounts. I'm looking at the accounts based on revenue, employee count, industry, and then internal criteria weighting. So our revenue ops team, what have they defined as let's say an A tier account, a B tier account? I'm looking at these factors. I'm also looking at warmth-based factors. Do I have any former customers? Do I have any accounts with lost opportunities in them? Do I have any accounts in which they have requested contact? I'm looking at these different factors and doing my best to prioritize of these 800 accounts. What are the top 50 best accounts that have the potential to yield the most revenue? It's not just based on their employee count or how much money they make. I really think the use case potential is increasingly important, and that's sort of dependent on your solution and what you look for. So in my case, if they have an international workforce, different offices, or maybe have open roles they're hiring for in international locations, that for us is a pretty important trigger. So an account that has maybe less revenue, but a lot of that could be a really great account for us. So I'm looking at this, I'm building a list while prospecting. So I'm not just waiting. I am actively adding people to sequence. So the priority for me is prioritizing my top 50 accounts, finding them, identifying them, researching them, while also adding the lowest hanging fruit, the warmth drivers, direct prospects to my sequence actively, aiming for 10 a day. And very shortly, I will begin the calling and the emailing very soon. So that's how I think about the planning, and it's all about pipeline. If your quota is 100K, the general rule of thumb is 3x coverage. So I need 300,000 in pipeline coverage to be able to put myself in a position to actually achieve that revenue goal. And the revenue goal is the only number that matters.
You said that with some emphasis. What caused the emphasis?
It's because we are numbers as salespeople. We are numbers. That is all that matters. And that's something that I'm very mindful of as the backdrop to all the content is your actions speak so loudly. I cannot hear a word you are saying. So the last thing I want to do is come out and say, oh, these are all the things I'm going to do. I really try and talk about what I am doing. And I recognize that no matter what I say, nothing I say matters more than the number I produce in revenue. That number defines me. That number is what, not, it doesn't define my self-worth, but that is how I will be judged and weighted and viewed internally with amongst my teammates, my colleagues, my leadership. I'm hyper aware of that. And there is no delusion around that. That is all that matters.
I want to pull something out of there too that I think is important from going back to the account strategy is that you focus on the use case, not just the blunt revenue, employee size, industry. Like you focus on what is a use case of this company when you're tiering accounts. I absolutely love that and think it's very wise, and it's something that is not generally considered in the 101 version of account strategy. So I think
because when you
awesome.
Call these executives, you want to have a perspective.
Thank you. For God's sake, please talking. Please keep talking.
You don't want to just say, "Are you familiar with John Habush podcast? Have you seen my email that I've sent you?" Like when you say that, am I speaking with John? When you say that, you come across as an amateur. Whereas when you come across as, "Hey, John, the reason I'm calling you, I noticed that you had an open software development position hiring in Bulgaria. Have you thought about the misclassification risk around bringing on a contractor versus a full-time employee for that role?" And they're like,
huh. See how tight that is? See how tight you just said that? That was like 15 seconds max. Like,
right.
Yeah.
And now they're thinking, now they're like, oh, this person has some value to offer. They know what they're talking about. They've done some research. They're much more likely to want to actually meet with you now versus you just desperately hoping they want to meet with you.
Oh my God. Thank you. All right. So let's get a little really tactical here because I'm actually curious too as you're walking through this. I talked to another big cold caller about this one-on-one, Will Falkenberg. You laughed. Do you know Will?
I don't know Will. I don't know who that is, but I wouldn't consider myself a big cold caller. I think it's just a prerequisite to be successful as a salesperson. That it's just funny that
I'm happy I said that because this is not something you and I have spoken about. So go.
Well, it's just funny that's sort of like a lot of people who have never met me in person sort of associate me as someone who is a big cold caller, but it's just funny.
And it's funny because it's really a prerequisite for success in the role.
Well, it's like, okay, so are you not a big, are you not a big cold caller? I'm not saying you, but it's like, who wouldn't want to be like, isn't everyone a cold caller in sales?
You would hope so, but no, I can tell you, no, people are not.
Yeah.
I want to get more tactical though for the value. When you're sequencing folks, like, are you just calling or are you emailing and calling? Like, what does that look like? Yeah, like I want to make sure we cover this before we wrap up.
What I did, I started a new organization. I'm very ignorant to what works or what doesn't work. So what did I do? I went to Outreach, which is our sales engagement platform, and I went to sequences, and I was able to see all the public sequences. I filtered them by which sequences have the most deliveries. That's important to me. And then I was able to look at them based on open rate and response rate. And I went through probably 100 sequences, and I found the 5 to 6 sequences with the most deliveries, 2K minimum, the highest open rate, and the highest response rate. I looked through them and I pulled the single best performing subject line and body of email from the best performing sequences. So I come in not knowing what I'm doing. I put together a sequence with what has been demonstrated to be the best performing based on actual metrics. And I create my own sequence. And my sort of master sequence that is kind of general, but like the first one I created has 5 emails. First one's manual. There might be one more manual in there. The rest are automated. And then 10 cold calls. So 15 steps over the course of 21, 23 days. Heavy cold calling because I like to call. And some emails in there that are gonna get them thinking about some different things. And that's how I have started in the sequencing, but it is a constant iteration. It's like the arrow before a hunt. If you do not sharpen the arrow, your ability to go have a successful hunt is diminished. So I'm going to sharpen the arrow before I start just prospecting blindly. I need to make sure I have the right weaponry, and then I'm ready to go. I'm ready to start attacking. And then next quarter, I will revisit it and make slight improvements.
I absolutely love it. One last question, cold calling, because I know we have to wrap it up. What general, just for the folks watching, they should probably just check out your channel. But what's the general framework of your overall script right now? Like, what are you doing from the opener to the POV to the CTA?
It's just making calls. It doesn't really matter what I say. You just make calls. But the way I think about it is I will always just say, hey, John, this is Trent from company. How are you? Good. The reason I'm calling you is boom. And it's something similar to what I said before is leading
Yeah,
with an assumptive insight
yeah.
to get them intrigued. Hey, we help companies like yours to do blah, blah, blah. Sounds like this is important for your team. I'd like to set up a meeting with you and then get to a call to action as soon as possible. And keep in mind the answer rate, a good answer rate's like 6-7%, good set rate's 15%, good show rate 70-80%, good conversion rate 80%. So you can use those metrics as you will, but no matter how good your script is,
You got to call, dude.
still you still get rejected a lot of the time or not be successful with it relative to the baseline. And another thing is there's a lot of different ways to do it. So no matter what I do, you could do the opposite thing and still set the meeting. So yeah, there's no universal script in my view.
Just make the calls, folks. Okay. With that being said, to wrap this up, before I ask the final question, where can people learn more about you and find you?
You can search for Trent Dressel under the Reddit sales page and find some really thoughtful perspectives and comments on me on there.
Oh
A lot
man.
of really thoughtful, nice, kind, successful, motivated people anonymized on Reddit. A lot of good people there.
I love that you brought that up. All right.
I
Anyway,
actually I've never read it, but it's just I had to call light to it because it's just funny to me that someone would go out of their way to go on Reddit anonymous and talk about someone
oh,
else.
it's weak. It's so weak. It's so weak.
I don't know if it's weak. It's more so just
I think it's weak.
they're so confused. It's I don't know how to put it.
Yeah, it's okay. Now, final question. If there is a SDR, BDR, AE that really wants to improve himself and be successful in software sales and overall just in life, they didn't have time to listen to this podcast for a reason, but they can hear one message from you that you're about to say. What is the one message you want to deliver to them, the one punchline that will help them to change their lives?
Show up.
That's a good one. Love it. Show up. Well, folks, thank you guys for listening. the TLDRs show up, make sure to hit that follow or subscribe button, whatever it is, on whatever platform that you are watching. Make sure to share it with at least one friend. Thank you, and we'll talk to you soon.